Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the regular meeting of Fernie City Council held at 6 p.m. on August 8th, 2023. We acknowledge that the city of Fernie is located within Kukinamakis, the unceded territory of the Yakutat Nucleate. We recognize that we live and work within their vast lands. Akanahunik are from Yakutat Nucleate and are members of the Tanaha-speaking peoples of British Columbia, Idaho, and Montana. I'll now call this meeting to order, and this meeting is being conducted by in-person and electronic means in accordance with Council Procedure Bylaw number 2446. I'll ask for a mover and a seconder and then a vote for the following recommendation: that if the communication link to the specified place for this meeting is interrupted and cannot be restored within 15 minutes, the meeting shall adjourn and reconvene to the soonest possible time the quorum can be achieved and public notice requirements met. Mover? Councillor Ramadas, seconded by Councillor Shoesmith. Any discussion? All in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. I'll now ask for a mover and a seconder for the approval of the agenda and any late items. Moved by Councillor McIsaac, seconded by Councillor Nixon. Any discussion? All in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. I'll now open the floor to public participation and invite the public in attendance or participating electronically who wish to comment on items listed on the meeting agenda in accordance with section 3.7.3 of the procedure bylaw to address council, except speakers must not address council regarding a matter for which a public hearing must be held or has been held pursuant to the Local Government Act prior to council's consideration of the matter or adoption of the bylaw. Speakers must not address council regarding a permit for which public notice must be given or has been given pursuant to the Local Government Act prior to council's consideration of issuance of the permit, and a speaker may only address council for a maximum of 3 minutes. And I'll ask Ms. Rhodes if there's anybody online or in the specified place who's expressed an interest.
No, Your Worship.
Thank you, Ms. Rhodes. Moving on to item number 6, consideration of bylaws and issuance of permits arising from public hearings or public hearing notice periods. And over to a presentation by our Manager of Planning, Mr. Simley.
Thank you, Your Worship. Keith Cupid. So today we are looking at development variance permit number 551 for 13 Cedarville Crescent. As council may recall, this did come forward for approval of the application at a previous meeting. The variance request is to vary the maximum height for an accessory building, being a garage, from 5.0 meters to 6.04 meters. In this case, the slopes on the lot are causing the overall building height to be over 5 meters, although the peak of the roof itself is within 5 meters of the finished grade at the maximum height of the grade. So in this case, our rationale for recommending approval is that the roof peak isn't higher, and that in the case if this garage were attached to the house, the peak of that roof could be 10 meters high rather than the requested 6.04. So really the only thing that's necessitating the variance in this case is the fact that the garage is detached from the house. We did receive one comment, public feedback, that was in support of the application, and we didn't receive any comments that were not in support of the application. So our recommendation tonight is that council authorize the issuance of the development variance permit. Thank you.
Thank you. Somebody, any questions? Seeing none, I'll ask Councillor McIsaac.
You can move it, yeah.
Okay, I'll ask
Want me to move the recommendation?
McConnell to read the recommendation.
The recommendation is that council authorizes the issuance of development variance permit number DVP 551 for 13 Cedarville Crescent. That's the one.
Moved by Councillor McIsaac, seconded by Councillor Shoesmith. Any further discussion? All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. And then item 8, bylaws. There's no staff report, so zoning bylaw number 1750, amendment bylaw number 2486 for adoption. Councilman Kaiser.
Sorry, Your Worship, just before we move on from the last thing, not
Yes.
relevant to the motion, but I noticed that the numbering on
I
that
was
is all
just noticing that. That's why I
just kind of whacked in.
stunned with it.
Might want to have that repaired before the minutes are adjourned.
Which numbering are you referencing?
Under 6.1 council package, the numbering goes to 9.1.
It's not on the version, it must be on the online version.
Is that on the PDF or the?
I'm looking at the PDF.
Okay, I will look at, I updated the agenda today. I learned that in order to clean up issues, you would have to occasionally clear your cache, because when it gets updated, it goes back to old ones. But it should be on the PDF version.
Yeah, it's okay.
On the copy I've got open is the HTML. And the copy that I'm showing on the PDF version is, I'll double check this. The online open version shows 6.178, 8.19, 9.1. I'm not sure what.
Well, we'll have to maybe sort that one out after.
Yeah, but the public facing versions are correct.
Okay. So this is zoning bylaw, so item 8.1, zoning bylaw number 1750, amendment bylaw number 2486, 2023 for adoption. Can I have a mover? Councillor Hamilton, seconded. Councillor Nixon, any discussion? All in favor? It's unanimous, thank you. On to item 9, business, and 9.1, another presentation by Mr. Simolini, our manager of planning.
Thank you again, Your Worship. So on to another development variance permit. This is development variance permit application number 556 for 1102 3rd Avenue. The reason for this variance coming forward is that the applicant has proposed a subdivision of this lot. They had it rezoned to R1 SL some time ago. And in order to have that subdivision approved, one of those conditions is to have the siting of the existing house on the lot legalized. So the reason, in that case, the house that sits on the lot sits right at the very back side of the lot, and actually does encroach a little bit into the lane, so there will be an encroachment agreement process for all of this. But the ask is to decrease the front yard setback. Now, I said the house is at the back of the lot, but we have to picture the property line changing with the subdivision. So the front yard setback from 3.0 meters to 0.55 meters, so that would be the property line adjacent to the street, in this case to 11th Street. The side yard setback from 1.5 meters to 0 meters, that would be the property line adjacent to the lane. And the overall maximum parcel coverage from 35% to 41.6%. So where the property line is proposed to be drawn, it'll be sort of postage stamp type property, and the overall parcel coverage will be there as well. Our rationale here is that really nothing's changing with the house itself. The house sits on the lot. It's not proposed to be renovated or made larger in any way. It's only legalizing the existing siting of the house in order to move forward. And our recommendation tonight is that council approve the development variance permit application number 536. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Simolini. Any questions? Just out of curiosity, sorry, when was that house built? The existing structure, do we have a sense of that?
Your Worship, I'm not sure exactly when it was built, but it would have been one of the older buildings.
If in the future they were to do any renovations to that house, like add a second floor and extensions, do they have to go through the whole process again, or are there limitations to extending that house, that structure in the future?
Your worship, through to Councillor Hamilton, Director Lennox may want to jump in here and confirm, but I believe that if any further non-conformances were to occur, expansion of the footprint of the house, whether it be building up or building out, they would have to get another development variance permit to do that. Yeah, that's correct.
Thank you. Any other questions? On that note, I will ask Mr. McCollum to read the recommendation.
Certainly, the recommendation is that the council approve development variance permit application number DVPA 556 and give notice of their intention to consider the issuance of development variance permit number DVP 556 for 1102 3rd Avenue.
Moved by Councillor Shoesmith, seconded by Councillor Hamilton. Any further discussion? All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. Moving along to 9.2, Ferry Creek Source Assessment and Reservoir Structural Remediation, a presentation by Project Engineer Lyon.
Thank you. I'm just going to try something new here. Let's get digitally. Okay. So hello, everybody. Today I'm presenting what should be a committee of the whole type presentation at council, and this is an update of the Ferry Creek programs this year. No decisions are required at this time. So a little background of our 2023 capital budget request on these two programs for the Ferry Creek Source Assessment. It had multiple programs underneath it. A hydrometric monitoring program, filtration, UV internal reservoir inspection, reservoir structural remediation design, and electrical service upgrades in support of that. And the approved budget for that consultant work was just almost $250,000. Secondly, we have the reservoir structural remediation, and that's the actual tender and construction of the structural remediation this year. That's crack repair and a membrane installation on the outside of our reservoir and valve chamber to limit any further issues and extend the lifespan. And that's approved budget was just over $900,000. So let's go through those projects. If I may, is there a question? No? Councilor Ramirez?
Oh, no, sorry.
Okay.
I have questions for later.
Looking forward to it. All right, let's go through those projects one by one. So first, we have the hydrometric monitoring program. 2 hydrometric stations were installed up at the Ferry Creek intake, which you see on the bottom right of your screen, and 1 climate station was installed on the chlorine building. And these stations will monitor for at least 1 year to give us more accurate flow data on the Ferry Creek source to further assess the groundwater, surface water interactions and the natural flow of the creek through the seasons. They were installed last week, so now they are going to be monitoring for a year. Secondly, we have the filtration exemption application. So staff were pursuing an application from Interior Health for the Ferry Creek source. This exemption allows a water supply to be permitted to operate without filtration if there are 2 disinfection methods and the city could draw from the wells during times of high turbidity at Ferry Creek. The city and our consultants were completing the design of a UV treatment system, which I'll talk about next. That would be our secondary disinfection method at Ferry Creek. Since that scope of work was identified, water quality issues have arisen at our secondary water source, the well. At times, water sampling results starting last summer have shown selenium concentrations beyond the 10 micrograms per liter, standard set by the BC Drinking Water Quality Guidelines. That means that we cannot consistently rely on the wells for potable water at all times. As the city cannot consistently rely on the water quality, although mostly we usually can, from the wells, staff don't see that the Interior Health will approve an exemption at Ferry Creek. Thus, the filtration exemption project under the Ferry Creek Source Assessment Program has been wrapped up. I'd like to just note to council that we have very safe drinking water. Our quality regularly meets the approved provincial water quality guidelines, but this is a requirement from Interior Health that we do either have a filtration exemption or we look into filtration. So water quality, rest assured, our operators are very good at what they do and we have good quality water. and we're working with Interior Health to get up to speed on what we need to do. So saying that, the UV treatment design was wrapped up after preliminary design. So we have a preliminary design package on the shelf. Reservoir structural remediation, internal reservoir inspection. We are going to do that during construction. So any cracks identified inside the cells at that time will be repaired. Reservoir structural remediation design that was completed this summer based on initial capacity checks in 2021 and then further serviceability design checks this year. The consultant was concerned about the structural stability of the roofs of every reservoir. So our reservoir has 2 cells, and each cell has a center column that kind of supports the entire roof, kind of like an umbrella. And they were concerned that that was not structurally sound, that the roof wasn't good enough for that. So staff approved a change order this spring to determine if additional roof support was needed. Thankfully, this analysis determined additional roof strengthening was not required so long as we don't do anything else to the roof, like we add piping inside the reservoir or something like that, any more loads. Given that the existing roof structure is at right now the limits of its capacity, our consultant recommends that any construction work on the roof restricts loading, so no heavy motorized equipment. And also for our operating staff, if there's a lot of snow, over 3 meters of fresh snow or 1 meter of packed snow, that should be cleared off as well. And again, without motorized equipment on the roof. Yes?
Sorry, Joanne, or Ms. Line, I apologize for that. So is there a change in the structural integrity of the roof? Like, is this age related in the reservoir, or what has changed in terms of the evaluation of the structural integrity of the roof?
So what, if I may, what they explained to me that if this was a new reservoir, it would not have met the roof strengthening requirement, because new reservoirs have that accommodation that if you want to do piping on the roof, you can. Ours was built without that, and so it works as it is, but it would not qualify if it was a new structure. So it's completely accessible as it is, acceptable as it is, but yeah.
And follow up, what do we define as heavy equipment? Are we gonna have you use snowblowers to get the?
No, I think a snowblower, yeah, no, I'm more thinking like those little track things.
Skid steer.
Yes,
Yeah.
skid steer, anything like that or greater. No driving a truck on it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, Councilman.
Thank you, Mayor Levin. So, a snowblower, and then how big is the roof, and is that like a 2-hour job, or is that a 4-hour job, or 6 hours? I mean, just curious, thinking about long-term solutions. Oh, sorry.
If I may, Peanut Gallery here.
Yeah.
We're kind of lucky that the water retains some heat coming down and does melt a bit of the snow off the roof of the reservoir when we get a warm spell, so that helps a lot. But if we were to hand blow that snow off with a standard snow blower that you would buy for your driveway, I would suspect a good 3 hours for sure.
Please proceed.
All right. Finally, on the Ferry Creek side of things, we have the electrical service upgrade design. So most of that was in support of the UV design, which would have drawn a lot more power. But obviously, that was shelved at the preliminary design stage. A few improvements that needed electrical design were completed to detailed design for tender. Mostly around HVAC improvements in the valve chamber that is attached to the reservoir. On the reservoir remediation side of things, we issued the invitation to tender last Friday. It closes August 25th. The work included is the exterior and interior crack repairs, the membrane, the cladding, the confined space entry for the interior review, looking for those cracks and repairs, the installation of a flush valve in the control building, so that will help the turnover of water in a turbidity event. Right now, we have a very small pipe that does that, and then it'll go from a 3/4 inch to a 4 inch. If you remember my pizza analogy, that's a big change. HVAC upgrades in the valve chamber as well to limit the moisture in there, and electrical upgrades to support the flush valve and HVAC. So we put those like small items from the Ferry Creek source system estimate into this tender to try and find some efficiencies and to limit the number of contractors working up at the site at once. Now let's talk about the budget. So as I mentioned earlier, the approved budgets this year, with what we've removed from the Ferry Creek scope, we first thought we would have a $243,000 budget for the Ferry Creek scope, and now it's down to $174,000. But we've also identified the construction cost estimate of $191,000, and so there may be a budget shortfall there. On the reservoir structural remediation side of things, our approved budget was just over $900,000. The latest construction cost estimate is $1.1 million, so there may be a shortfall there. So we're yes.
Thank you. You just said twice that there may be a budget shortfall. Can you clarify?
I can, if I may.
Please.
So it is out, the project is out for tender right now, and we do not know what the bidders are going to bid.
Thank you.
So this is the cost estimate by our consultants mid-July. It does include a 15% contingency. So it's the short, so it is a little larger. Perhaps. By being agile with the budget allocated for the Ferry Creek source assessment, staff are trying to deliver improvements to the infrastructure that were originally identified in the 2021 Ferry Creek drinking water source to tap assessment sooner than predicted. This year was only supposed to be designed, and we have brought things to tender, so much more in advance. The reservoir structural remediation construction design is out for tender for this month, and recommendations for award are expected to be presented to council at the September 12th regular council meeting, and any additional budget allocations or modifications of scope could be expected at that time. Thank you all.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Lyon? Councilor Ryan.
I got one question. Thank you. Just in terms of information dissemination, won't the bidders know what this price is? Like, this is a publicly available information right now, right? So I'm just wondering if you get competitive bidding, knowing that, there's a 15% contingency attached here. You know what I mean?
If I may, that's a very common contingency amount, and also bidders could look up our approved budgets as well, which has the amount of money that we have in stock for it.
It's a bit of a catch-22 in local government. Councilor.
Thank you. This is kind of going back to the original report from 2021, but at the time, part of that report was to actually assess just the volume of that source. And rereading the report, it reminded me that we don't actually know how much water is available in that source. So not being an engineer or a hydrologist or geologist, is the hydrometric testing meant to give us an understanding of how much water we can expect to come out of that source?
If I may, yes, that is part of the hydrometric stations and the climate station. So when it rains, we'll know that rain happened in the catchment, and then we'll monitor. We have 2 hydrometric monitors, one that's kind of on top of the intake, so it will only see these surface flows from high flows event or spring freshet, and then one in the what's called the stilling well, just below the layer, so it captures all the flows. So it is, yes, part of that is to determine flow volumes and how it's used during the year.
And a quick
Yeah,
follow-up.
please.
At the start of the presentation, you mentioned that the hydrometric testing stations have been installed. I believe you said they would be installed for 1 year. Is that going to give us enough historical data ongoing to be able to understand what the impact of rain events in the winter are going to have on how much water seeps into the aquifer or whatever it is, so that we can start predicting and understanding what our capacity is if we're down to this single source?
If I may.
Please.
It'll be a good start. It was the amount of time that was offered by our consultant. We own the equipment, the monitoring equipment, and then we are just paying an annual fee to have the data and through some sort of online platform. So we can continue to pay a very low fee to continue running those and monitor for longer, but that at the first idea was what the consultant recommended.
Councilor Nixon?
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, the entire selenium situation is really unfortunate, but I have to give kudos to staff for pivoting and being agile, as you said in the report. I guess my question is, do we know how much time we spent on the filtration project? Like how much staff time was spent on that? And if that number is significant, can we reimburse and charge the people who are doing the selenium distribution in our community?
If I may, actually that part was very small because it really hinged on the UV design. So staff had an initial conversation with Interior Health and they wanted the UV to be up and running before they would give an exemption. So we were just working on that, so very little.
Okay, thank you.
Fair question.
I'm
Baronowski.
Thank you, Worship, through council. The only thing I would like to add is we are tracking with some specificity staff and consultant time on various aspects of the analysis and planning and design on all of our water supply challenges so that we have a good overall view of where we're spending money, how much money we're spending, and how much effort.
Thank you. Ms. Lyon, just a couple of questions for clarification. So you said the hydrometric station will measure the surface water flows and one will measure the stilling wells? Well,
If I may.
and sorry, is that measuring groundwater flow?
That will measure all the combined flow. So one is installed like on the top of the intake, and so it only gets the very surface flows.
Okay.
And then that intake structure, there's two streams that go into it and underneath, and our water comes from underneath. The second monitor is below all of that, so it'll have the total flow, so it would see the springs and the surface water.
Okay. And when you say underneath, is a pipe underneath or groundwater influence?
So our intake pipe is underneath this structure,
okay.
yeah.
Thank you. And the other one was from your report, and I apologize, it's sort of mid-page 2. Talk about meeting guidelines, and the only times are during turbidity events when we cannot switch to the James White wells, or if the total water demand is greater than the James White wells can supply. So James White wells cannot completely replace Ferry Creek in terms of community water supply. Is that?
If I may, they can at most times.
Okay.
Currently, stop me if I'm wrong, anyone, but there's been a high demand for water with people doing their lawns and things like that, and that is why we switched back to the Ferry Creek source, even though we have a fair rating. So yes, James White wells at high demand cannot completely be our supply.
Thank you. Mr. Heiser, do you have?
I can just clarify and expand on that a bit. Typically in the summer, we see obviously increased demands in mornings and afternoons, evenings, for lawn watering on top of usual use. We lately have been hitting peaks of 170 liters per second plus, which is pretty much our limit. And then we see the reservoir starting drawing down to levels that we're uncomfortable with, and then we're forced to switch back to a turbine source.
Okay. Thank you.
A follow-up question to
Counselor
that.
Hamilton, I apologize.
That's okay. Follow-up question to that. We recently passed the water control, I'm butchering the name, but the water control bylaw. At what stage do we start implementing water restrictions? Like, how do we monitor that and action that?
Sorry, through Councilor Hamilton, you referred to the water works bylaw?
Thank you.
Yeah, so that is going to online engagement. It hasn't been passed,
Okay.
it's just early view for
Gotcha.
yourselves.
Thank you, yeah.
Following that, we will bring it to council for adoption. And then in that, if you refer back to that bylaw, there's one clause in there saying that council can enact watering restrictions. On a very basic level, we could enact something, and then later on we'll come to you after engagement with the outdoor watering bylaw that'll have tiers similar to other communities. But with that first bylaw, then you can action those watering restrictions and have associated fines.
But if I may further, to kind of get a little more pointed, like, what is the trigger from the staff's perspective to bring that to council to make that decision? Like, how would staff determine that we might want to consider a watering bylaw as opposed to us just sitting here one night when it's hot, we should maybe throw in a water restriction?
Through to Councilor Hamilton, I'll answer it 2 times for different reasons. The tiered approach will come with like dates and very specific triggers, i.e. 70% of the reservoir.
Okay, thank you.
These things kind of happen slowly though, and in the meantime, we'll see the reservoir start to go up, we'll see the levels start dipping below levels that we normally see, and then we would communicate to you like, hey, it's time.
Okay.
But after the outdoor watering bylaw, it'll be way more structured, completely clear.
Councilor McCann.
Thank you, Worship. I'm just wondering, is it being suggested that right now, regardless of our water situation, we would have no mechanism to restrict people using water?
Pretty much.
Yeah,
I feel bad I asked that question now.
well, I seem to recall that from the discussion of the water bylaw that we discussed.
At this point, we're asking the community to work with us, and not put ourselves in a situation where, you know, if everybody, you wave your magic wand and everybody reduces their usage and we can stay on the clean wells during a turbine event like we are right now, we wouldn't have a water quality advisory. However, as people ramp up their usage beyond what the wells can handle, the reservoir starts coming down, we gotta go back to a turbine source and stay on our water quality advisory. And that was put out in the first comms due to increased demand, we would be on the water quality advisory. I forget the date we issued it, but 2 weeks ago or so.
Further?
No, thank you.
Councilor Adams.
Thanks, Your Worship. I know the answer to this partially, but I just wanted to fully clarify, like, what is tech's involvement so far in this entire 2 programs?
In these 2 programs?
Like, I'm specifically referring to one line where this line says that, you know, staff are working closely with tech and interior health. So I just wanted to understand what are the different layers involved with tech's involvement.
Mr. Bornowski.
Yeah, thank you very much. For your worship to council, we currently have been holding regular meetings between our technical teams. So our engineering team, including Sabrina Pennant with ISL, who was assigned, you'll remember, the backfill and project management plan to this file on specific actions and how to prioritize those actions. And then separately, we have been meeting more at a governance level to structure a number of agreements on how we approach and prioritize and collaborate, who makes decisions about what roles do each of us have at the table. But working very closely together to formalize that, and I think council should be seeing something to put paper behind those agreements in the not too distant future. But technical teams are working directly on prioritizing, planning, and assessment.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you, Ms. Lyon, it was very informative. Moving on then to item 9.3, Council Code of Conduct, a presentation from our Director of Corporate Services.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Actually, no presentation for this. This is one that has been vetted quite well at the committee of the whole. The document that is attached to the agenda is the one that was approved to be advanced today for adoption. So it's simply asking council to adopt the amendment to the council code of conduct policy.
Thank you, Mr. McCall. Any questions? Seeing none, I'll ask for a mover and seconder that council adopt Council Code of Conduct Policy CP 2022-02, Amendment Number 1. Moved by Councilor Hamilton, seconded by Councilor Nixon. Any further discussion? All in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. And moving on to 9.4, agreement with Fernie District Historical Society for coal mine records. A report from our Director of Corporate Services.
Yes, Your Worship, and this one I am going to have a presentation. So, in your package is a report asking council to endorse an agreement between the City of Fernie and the Fernie District Historical Society with respect to a significant amount of archival records that are located in our, excuse me for a second, in our basement for the most part. These archival records were left here for the most part by Shell Canada Limited when they gifted this building to the city, and as you can see on the plaque, on March 1, 1993. And in this photo, you'll see that this is how they're currently stored in our basement room. There's a couple other spots where they exist as well. But our basement room, as much as Parks and Facilities does a very good job of maintaining these facilities, they are not designed to store archival records by any stretch. It's not controlled for temperature, it's not humidity controlled, and it's certainly not maintaining those records in a good state. Some things like the material you see before, you would think those coal samples, for instance, probably don't care. But the Fernie District Historical Society for several years now has been consistently accessing that facility for various reasons and has asked on more than one occasion to be able to take control of these materials such that they can be maintained properly. Based on those requests, and after having the agreement drafted by legal counsel, the agreement that's before you is really very simple, but it clearly identifies that we are prepared to let the Fernie District Historical Society take control of those records. So the recommendation's on the screen, and available for questions.
Thank you. Mr. McConnell, any questions?
I was going to ask a question, but it's very clearly answered in the agreement, and that was what happens if they were to find any city records mixed in amongst the other materials. But yeah, as I read the agreement, I saw that was clearly outlined, so I'm happy to move the motion.
I'll read that loud.
Thank you.
Council authorized the mayor and the corporate officer to execute the attached agreement with the Fernie District Historical Society regarding the access or removal of uncatalogued historic records and items that do not relate to the business or affairs of the city, but relate to the history of the Elk Valley region.
Moved by Councilor Hamilton, seconded by Councilor Audie Kelly. Any further discussion?
What happens to stuff that's already cataloged?
So fair question.
Sorry. Terrible bad.
We can have that too.
Yeah, given that it's been accessing it probably is somewhere. Yeah. Fair enough. Any further discussion? All those in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. Item 9.5, a request for proposal audit services. A report from our Deputy Director of Finance.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, Council. We don't have a slideshow for this report, but we received two proposals for the external audit of the city's financial statements for the 5-year ending periods of December 31st, 2023 to 2027. The two proposals are from BDO, the partner of which is from Salmon Arm, but BDO has offices around the province, and then GPI Chartered Accountants from Fernie. Staff reviewed both proposals and obtained references from other municipalities and are recommending GPI. The primary reason we are recommending GPI over BDO is due to the cost savings to taxpayers, with BDO's cost being 50% higher than GPI the first year and increasing it each year, whereas GPI's price will remain the same over the 5-year period. The secondary reason we are recommending GPI over BDO is due to the firm's experience with auditing the City of Fernie's financial data. Having that history of experience with our auditors increases the audit's effectiveness and efficiency. And additionally, our recent experience with this firm has been nothing but positive, as our finance department has faced a major period of turnover. That's it.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Cook? Councillor Ramos.
Thank you, Worship. Just there's a little bit of arithmetic error here. There's one line which says GPI scored higher than the other proponent at 92 of 100, but when I add this up, it says 87.
Oh,
I noticed that too, I'm sorry.
BDO as well. I had a question, Your Worship, I forgot what it was, so I'll come back.
Councillor Nixon.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just curious about the length of the contract. What are the advantages of such a long contract?
Developing that relationship with our auditors. I think a 5-year period is pretty standard for this type of contract. And it's good to have that kind of relationship because it just increases the quality of advice that they can give us when we go through our audit if we're seeing the same auditor consistently.
Thank you. It was actually just buying time for Councillor Ramos.
Your Worship, I was just wondering like what additional services actually meant between the two auditors.
Can you just
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Ramos. That would be like if we had any questions for them on irregular payroll issues that might come up. You know, for example, if we adopted a new overtime policy, we could ask our auditors if this is like a taxable benefit to our employees, and then they typically would do the research on our behalf and answer the question for us, usually at no additional charge. And then another example would be that auditors provide a management letter every year, which recommends additional controls that they found through their testing over the years. So that's an example of additional service other than their audit report.
Thank you. Further? No. Thank you. Any further questions, Councillor Hammond?
I do have, my question, or perhaps, I'm not sure, I haven't been able to figure out exactly how to phrase this, but historically, we have had some issues with the recommended auditor and getting audit information on time. The previous RFP scored these back the other way. So I'm just curious, I guess, from purely the new staff's perspective, if you feel confident that even though we've had these delays, that's not going to impinge or hinder staff in delivering the audit and getting the budget and everything organized moving forward.
In speaking to the timeline of the budget, at least in my experience, I don't see that as being the fault of the auditor. I think that our department needs more streamlined processes and procedures regarding our year end, and then that will increase, or that will improve the timing of these. Also, I think a lot of other municipalities have their financial statements completed around the same time as we did. So it was a pretty standard timeline, but I think that does sort of fall in our department to streamline those processes.
Thank you for your candor.
Just to add to that, in terms of the scoring matrix, the previous one from 5 years ago didn't put as much weight on price as this one, so I kind of changed the way that was scored, which is a very large reason for the big swing in overall score. And then, yeah, like Ms. Cook touched on, through our reference gathering process, a lot of other municipalities don't receive their statements until May as well. But I'm confident that we will do better with this firm going forward. A, because we're shifting the budget cycle forward by starting it off here this fall. So that's going to give us more time in the winter to prioritize year-end audit and get them better information faster, which we haven't done a great job of in the past. Since I've been here, we've been dealing with internal medical leaves and retirements and other major life changes in staff, and then more medical leaves, and GPI has been extremely flexible in helping us work through that and sort out our challenges. So, and now that we have a permanent full-time staff going forward, that's we'll have been here for a couple of years, I'm feeling really good about it going forward.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Barrett. That's very encouraging. Any further questions?
Just one more. Thank you. Just in terms of projection here, you had them at $31,000 for eternity illness. Is that how confident are you with that number?
31,000 for the 5-year contract period.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
100% confident that it will be $31,000.
Yeah, that was their number from their proposal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, just wanted to check.
Yeah, and that's consistent with the last 5 years.
Gotcha.
Excellent. Thank you. Any other questions? Do you mind reading the recommendation?
So the staff recommendation is that GPI Chartered Accountants be appointed auditors for the corporation of the City of Fernie for the 2023 to 2027 fiscal years.
Mover? Councillor Artie Kelly, seconded by Councillor McIver. Any further discussion? All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. Which feeds into item 9.6, the 2024 to 2028 financial plan, a presentation from our Director of Finance, Mr. Burdick.
Thank you, Mayor Elgin. Good evening, Council. I just have a few slides. Well, first off, this is kind of our kickoff to the 2024-2028 financial plan. And I just have a few slides with a couple of bullet points on each of the budget guidelines in your report. And as I'm going through them, if there's any you'd like to see change or discuss, please jump in. This is kind of a new step in the process since I've been here, and the intent of these guidelines is to provide staff with a council-endorsed framework to use as kind of a guideline for our initial internal development of the financial plan. So right on to guideline 1, discusses council strategic direction. All departments will be required to align its service programs and projects with council strategic direction. Staff are scheduled to have a couple of days seminar in late August to discuss operationalizing council strategic direction, excuse me. And then council is scheduled in October, November to adopt their strategic plan. Guideline 2 is inflation, which when I wrote this report was still coming in at 6.4% according to BC CPI, which is not at all to say that our intent is just to apply a flat 6.4% increase across the board. Staff will be looking at each line item with intent to see where we can save and where we can be more efficient. Also, we have several agreements in place outside of inflation which stipulate different percentages of increase, mostly our CBAs and our exempt compensation policy. It's also worth noting that our capital projects, not only ours, but many municipalities' capital projects are consistently coming in over budget, which signifies perhaps even more inflation than that 6.4 would suggest. Guidelines 3 and 4 state that the upcoming budget is to be developed based on existing service and staffing levels. The next guideline is efficiency, which is consistently on the mind of staff and likely council. We'll be bringing forward a few targets and service level indicators a little later in the budget cycle to help us put in some some more measurable targets to see if we're improving in certain areas and finding other areas in which to save. Community partners funding levels will remain similar to 2023, except for those that already have agreements in place that have some other sort of funding increase. Guideline 7, contributions to reserves are to remain at the same levels of 2023, noting that they are still lower than what was recommended in the 2018 AMIC, mainly because of our short-term funding arrangement for the operations facility. Debt is expected to remain at consistent levels, and by that I just mean there's no planned additional debt to be taken on. If the timing of some of our larger projects changes, however, then we'll obviously be bringing that back to council as part of our more in-depth budget presentations later this year. Public consultation will continue to be a focus throughout the budget process. All budget meetings are open to the public, and we'll do another open house like we did last year. And we also have a citizen satisfaction survey in the works. And the last guideline, non-market change, which is the amount of new taxation arising from new construction during the year. Historically, the city of Fernie has used this amount to help balance our current year's budget to lessen the tax burden on the current taxpayer. Some municipalities in BC do it this way. Others make an effort to put that money towards something else, like a big capital project, or just putting it into reserves to use for future use. This guideline is stating that we'll be doing our status quo, but it will be presented to council for discussion during the in-depth budget presentations later this year. And next steps, the draft capital plan, 5-year capital plan will be presented to council during December committee of the whole, which I'll note that the budget schedule is still a draft, so that's subject to change. Other upcoming meetings related to this process are, as I said, staff is doing operation. Thank you. Strategic direction, as I mentioned in the previous slide. And in October and November, council is scheduled to adopt their strategic plan. And then I just wanted to close with our timeline that council has seen through previous presentations with Ms. Jansen. We're just kicking off the 2024 budget process now. And so that's it for me. Thanks for your time. Happy to help answer questions.
Questions for Mr. Burdick? Councilor Ramirez.
Just a comment, Your Worship, the guidelines are well done and it's well thought out. Really liked it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Feedback. Councilor Kelly.
I wanted to ask Mayor Milligan about the budget process policy. I see its effective date was 2009, and I noticed, CFO, that some of the titles and a lot of the things in it are out of date. So question one would be, are we going to update this policy as part of the budget process?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Kelly. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and when I was reading through that policy, I was happy to note that it doesn't describe anything that we don't already do, other than those titles and some names. And so we're still following more or less the same process as it was back then. But yeah, I'd love to update it for sure.
And second question, if I may.
Please, yeah.
On the second page of the policy, it talks about each member of the management team is responsible for ensuring that budget policy and guidelines are adhered to, and that their net positions are not compromised. And the net position is the net operating cost of the department and allows movement of money. Can you just sort of clarify what movement of money would be? Would that be like canceling things that we budgeted, or would that be just reallocating resources?
So thanks for that question. It's a great question. The level of detail that council approves is quite high level, and it's usually by department. So let's say in parks, for example, they had some medical leaves, and all of a sudden they're not paying a couple of staff members, then that's just saying that the director of parks has the authority to hire someone to replace that person. While that additional person isn't necessarily a budgeted item, it's replacing the cost saved with something else. So Yeah, it's saying that staff has the authority to spend up to the limit that council has approved, even if it's not line by line accurate all the way down. Because as you know, council sees that document with our 1,800 GL lines. They're over and under like all the time, all year long. And so, and to build on that, when I first started, there was a historical process of just finding a line that had budget left and coding the expense to that line. And so therefore, it was impossible to determine which expenses were actually under expense or over because of that process of coding. So now what we've been doing is just coding expenses where they belong and then updating our individual lines as we go forward year after year, and that data gets better and better.
So would it involve, say, canceling something that council had wanted to move forward without council knowing?
That's right.
Thank you.
But the example you provided, hiring somebody to replace somebody who wasn't coming back in the short term wouldn't require a budget amendment.
That's right, unless it's going to increase that overall line.
But to the process you described previously, finding a line that's has budget left and then allocating expenses there, so we can't track that's being spent on. We're sufficiently comfortable with the controls now that we know where our money is going.
Yeah, yes. But again, we've only been doing that for 2.5 years now since I started, so we're still building that year after year data.
Sure. Yeah. Fair. Sorry, Councillor Nixon, go ahead.
Thank you. Sorry for, you were going to ask a question, but I'm going to interrupt you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, please do. I was already speaking. So.
Just curious if we have a strategy to increase the public engagement that we had at our open house and in all of our public input. It seemed like it was really anemic last year. So is there something else that we can do?
If I can, your worship, working with Ms. Rose, there are many things we can do. We have not started to deliberately plan what that looks like yet in detail. We are preparing our RFP for the fall survey and review that draft RFP currently. Yeah, not into designing the public consultation yet.
Thank you.
And just a question from your report, Mr. Burdett. Line on page 2. We acknowledge that our current budgeting approach is built around departments rather than city services, which presents challenges for staff and council to make more focused decisions on service level changes. Are we moving in that direction to make those changes?
Thank you for that, Mayor Milligan. I would call it a medium-term goal to move towards pure service level-based budgeting. As you know, in our budget this year, we have our service level, I forget what it's called.
Level of service review.
Yeah, level of service review project, which is going to clearly define all of our levels of service. And I think the size of that list will kind of surprise everybody in the room. And then there'll be work to do to assign accurate costing to each of those. But yeah, I mean, just to use an example, the RDEX budget is all level of service, and they've got individual reserves for each of their individual service levels, and I would love to get there instead of our big categories that we still have now. Yeah.
Thank you. And so it's no small task, is what you're saying. Thank you. Councillor Ramdas.
Thank you, Bishop. Just continuing with your thought there, could we just focus on big hitters and not worry about the entire list of service level to give us at least a 80% view of what it looks like?
Yeah, thanks for that, Councillor Ramdas. Absolutely, that would be the starting point, like our biggest dollar value and time spenders on that list. Yeah.
Is it possible within this 2024 budget cycle?
Yes, it's possible.
Okay.
I would like to not overpromise on this. And the reason being, we do have a grant to do level of service workshops with Asset Management BC. It is a transformation of how we map, measure, report on, and assess all of our services, and it is not a small task. And we have one director of asset management and one director of finance and a great deputy director, but our team is small and tapped out on major projects, so I just don't want to overpromise. It's what we are working towards. Do I believe that we'll have 80 or 90% of our service levels mapped for this budget process? I do not. I would love to be optimistic, but realism says that with 2 people leading this charge and people dedicating capacity from already full plates, it's going to take time. And we are working on it, but it will take time.
And the model that you talked about, the RDK model, that was built from the ground up to work that way, and we were a completely different beast. So it's sort of reverse engineering our service delivery to those categories.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Berger? Councilman Kaiser?
Thank you, Worship. In 2023's budget process and discussions, it was brought up, the mine sharing revenue was brought up with regards to its potential to create a long-term funding source as opposed to short-term. Since we're at the beginning of the budget process now, I'm wondering if this is the right time to put to staff a question about how, if it is possible, what are the options and ramifications and so on of potentially taking a portion of the mine sharing revenue and creating a long-term reserve that would eventually replace that should it cease to exist or significantly be reduced over the long term. And here I'm talking about, a 30 to 50 year plan. We get very few options, I think, sitting around the table here to create things that build upon one another to create long-term benefits for the community. I think this might be one option. I know it's been mentioned here, but we've never really explored if that's possible. If it is possible, how it would happen and what the ramifications would be to the taxpayer. And I'm wondering if this is the appropriate time to communicate that to staff to bring back as part of the ongoing budget process.
Well, I certainly like that thinking, but Mr. Burdick, your immediate reaction to that?
Might be premature.
Yeah, thanks for that, Councilman Isaac. I think my recommendation would be either to amend the 10th guideline to include it with our NMC options that we're going to be presenting, because to me it's kind of a similar source of extra funding. Or I can add a 11th guideline to present that in terms of what we could do with it, what percentage we absolutely need to balance our budget, and what percentage maybe we can put into a reserve or our other reserves, and then have that discussion with what we're comfortable with in terms of our options. So I'll end that.
Thank you.
No specific directions need to be given. I can just.
I might defer to Mr. McConnell on that. I don't think the recommendation references any specific guidelines. Ms. Cook has taken a note here to amend guideline 10 or add guideline 11, which is just me keeping it in mind for when I'm prepping the in-depth presentations later. Is that?
There's no recommendation, this is a discussion.
Yeah, and this isn't an existing policy you're amending right now, and this isn't, no need for motion on this one.
Thank you. Good thinking, thank you. One other question I wanted to ask, if I could, is, and I might get the nomenclature wrong, but service charges. So we charge for certain services that the city provides to various businesses, others in the community. Have we done a thorough review of those and determined whether, because I know it's come up from time to time, sewer connection charges are one that jumps immediately to mind, that were somewhat antiquated and have since been refreshed and consequently are greater sources of revenue for the city. Are we seeking those out in our processes to ensure that they're up to date and that we're charging what we should charge, to ensure that we're returning the value to the taxpayer that's due them, I guess?
Thanks for that, Mayor Milligan. The bylaw that comes to mind immediately is their user fee bylaw, which I won't put Director Logan on the spot, but that will be coming. There's an update to that that's being worked on for council. And so I don't have a good timeline sense for that. But as part of that discussion, there should be a discussion on what level of subsidy council is comfortable with for all of these different facilities that we're renting out and other things, and how that compares to what our level of subsidy is now. And if council wanted to change that, then we would adjust the fees accordingly. Yeah, so I'll be working with Director Logan on that presentation to come up with that sort of data to give to council to use in their decision making.
Thank you.
Additionally, your worship and council, if I can add, the cemetery fees and relevant bylaw will be updated as well with a similar view. They're looking at what are our most outdated and most impactful bylaws that updating. Connections was one, cemetery is another, and then overall the user fee bylaw, given what we've learned and that the bylaw itself states that it should be coming back for review this time.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Robinson.
Your worship, if I may add, also the tax exemption for certain properties. I think I asked the golf club a while ago, things like those two, that would be great.
Thanks again for that. That bylaw, we have to submit that to BC assessment at the end of October every year. So that will be coming to council in the next couple of months. And at that point, we can have the discussion on properties that are currently on that list. And because I believe this is the last year for all the properties, and then we have to renew that bylaw for another 10 years, or maybe it's next year's the last year. Another couple of months that'll be coming forward.
Appreciate it, thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Bird, appreciate it. Thank you. Item number 10, correspondence. Item 10.1, request for support, community future. Well, I should ask any comments on any of these that council would like to share. Councilor Adams.
Thanks, Your Worship. I was just wondering if there was a free press reporter here in the attendees. I don't see it. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, I've got a comment on that one if I may.
Oh, please.
Here's my comment. Do not get your news from Facebook. Period. Go to the source. Don't get your news off Facebook. That's the end of rant.
Thank you. Don't mince words. Councilor Nixon.
Thank you, Your Worship. Do we actually spend any money? Like, do we have, it says in that letter, do we have any economic clout? We're advertising on Facebook anywhere, are we?
I don't believe we pay for any advertising on social media, do we, Mr. Bornowski?
Your worship, by practice, no. We have once in my time here done paid promotion, but we don't spend money advertising on social platforms. We do maintain a city page in our local paper and publish online and in print, but we don't advertise on social media.
No, I didn't think so. Thank you. Any other comments from any of the items under correspondence?
I have a question probably for staff, but with 10.1, I read the submission deadline was about 2 weeks ago. So would there be any value in submitting a letter at this stage anyways?
Yeah.
We didn't follow up on that with the individual who sent that to us at the time, so we received what we had. We obviously didn't have a meeting we could add that to at the time we received it, so.
Fair enough.
Yeah, probably.
Timing.
Timing, exactly right. Okay, thank you. That brings us to item 11, reports from council members. And tonight we'll start with Councilor Audie Kelly.
Thanks for noting. Not a ton of things to report. I have been communicating with some of the folks that live on 2nd Avenue near the school, and I did get a letter from them, and apologies, it came over the weekend and I couldn't make the, I couldn't share it and it wouldn't open, and our expert wasn't able to open it either, our on staff. So I did copy I went and got the original from the people and I did bring it. So everyone on council does have a copy regarding the parking and changes like that. And I'm wondering what possible recourse they might have, or what input they could have. They're asking, about the city reconsidering the layout. So I was hoping maybe CAO could.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. If I may, through the
Please.
council, my understanding is that these are residents who are concerned about road reconfiguration around Isabella Dickin. This is the completion of the construction project at the elementary school, where also related to our active transportation master plan, having bus drop-off taken off of 13th, our major collector, and safety improved for drop-off, bus loading and unloading, and then future active transportation corridors along 13th were prioritized, and in their development, we requested an off-street bus loop or bus drop-off area. Their design engineer had prepared plans and submitted them for approval, which were reviewed and approved, and we've now notified the community of the upcoming change. My recommendation would probably be to provide their contact information to the appropriate contact at the school district, who would then be responsible for making a decision as to whether they would seek their traffic engineers to redevelop an alternative design that responded to the concerns that they would then submit to us for review and potential approval. That sounds like the most appropriate solution, given that I know qualified professionals worked on this quite substantially to try and ensure a safe traffic flow for what's becoming an extremely busy elementary school.
And further to that, if I may, Morgan, with the way we're having communication with council and the way that our council procedure bylaw is set up so that people can only speak to items that are on the agenda that they have concerns about, or they have to give us 2 weeks notice for a delegation to come before council. That's sort of led me to think that there is a bit of a barrier to people being able to come forward with things like this, and I'm wondering if we should look at amending it so that folks have the opportunity to come forward to us with things that are not on the agenda.
Your Worship, if I can, that is to yourself as council, as to what you determine. My strong recommendation is not to have public participation on council agendas. Your role is to be seen making decisions in public, not to facilitate public decision-making. It's a philosophical view that I have and that I believe in. However, this is your meeting and your bylaw, and you can do what you please with it. Fundamentally, I would raise a flag that I do not think residents engaging council on an applicant's development outside of the consideration of that development within our bylaws or zoning is likely the most appropriate use of your time, and that we can connect the residents directly with the designers or the authority building the facility, whether that's a trail, whether that's a street, when it's not a city facility and we are not consulting on that design, it's not ours. I would recommend connecting them with the appropriate individual. However, as I said, it's your council, it's your bylaw.
Yeah, if I may, I wasn't speaking specifically to this type of issue, but to any type of issue that concerns residents, more or less. So, but thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Well, and just procedurally, I'm wondering if, if you as a councillor wanted to bring that forward to an agenda, potentially committee of the whole, for review and discussion. I don't know that that's inappropriate, Mr. O'Connell.
No, Your Worship, and as Mr. Warnowski alluded to, this is it's within the procedure bylaw itself that processes exist, and as was confirmed to council, the procedure bylaw itself is up for review this fall, and is up for review every year. So it would be at that time that we would look at those processes and how things come forward to the agenda.
No, thank you for that, yeah. If it's coming up this fall,
It is anyway, so, and as you've probably already been reflecting on your upcoming schedule, next week's committee of the whole is the one in August. There isn't one in September because of UBCM, and so October is when the next committee of the whole is, and oftentimes we receive delegations to that.
Yeah.
So it's an individual, a group can make application of a delegation. If a matter is, and to speak to something a bit differently, if a matter is truly emergent, obviously council can deal with it if it wishes to, right?
Right.
Most things that come forward to council are not necessarily emergent, and the reason why the process exists is to vet it, to continue to work with it, to have staff review it as best as possible, such that you're being given the best information to make your decision. But if a matter is emergent and there's a means to a method where we should be dealing with something in an emergent method, obviously council has the discretion to do so. If there is a concern with respect to bringing something forward more in a more timely fashion than what our current process provides.
Thank you. That's helpful. Thank you. Anything else, Councillor Rodney Kelly?
No, thanks very much.
Councillor Kazak.
Thank you, Worship. Just before my report, I would just say I really support our councillors, everyone around the table bringing stuff to the meeting in a through the agenda fashion, because it gives the opportunity for staff to find out good information, to be able to give good responses. For my report tonight, not very much. I wanted to do a little shout out of thanks for all our hardworking fire rescue and search and rescue people who've been turning potential disasters on the river into stories of near disaster on the river, and I really hope people will heed the warnings about river safety. Also want to give a little shout out to the really hardworking local and international fire crews that are protecting our neighbor right now. That's a really scary situation. Drive by there at nighttime and it looks really ominous, so hopefully that's turn out. A little rain today, I'm sure, probably helped a little bit. And then finally, it was my pleasure to attend the Annex Park official opening today and got to see that the big comically large scissors actually work, which was great. The park has undergone a considerable facelift over the last little while, on top of very necessary flood mitigation work. So that was a pleasure to attend today.
Thank you. Councillor Adams.
Thank you, Worship. Just another piece of business here. I'm making it a habit now that I'm using this time to bring up business items. But I was approached by a couple of citizens, and also I believe one of the other councillors was also approached by the same individuals with regards to our choice of the electric vehicle, the Mac E, I believe. So
If I may, Your Worship,
just was wondering for more information.
We have 4 electric vehicles. 2 have now been procured and are in service. They are Subaru, I don't know the model number, Solteras. 2 are on order and expected this fall, and they are Ford EV SUVs. They are Mach E's. Our criteria for SUVs is that they have all-wheel drive and a long range, and at the time of ordering, those matched those criteria and were comparable in price to a gas-powered SUV that would also match those criteria, have all-wheel drive and good range. Yeah.
And I expect, in terms of decision-making, if we needed to, our partners at the Community Energy Association could provide us a long list of cost savings in terms of maintenance on those vehicles. Mr. Heisler.
If I may jump in, I know it's your report period. We are bringing the fleet policy back to council this fall, and it does have some considerations for EVs and more fuel efficient options, and at that point, council can put their marks on the policy, how they want it to play out.
Thank you.
I would suggest, and I've been made aware of like a post that they're luxury SUVs, and that's not the case. We're replacing end-of-life or beyond end-of-life fleet as per our fleet program, which is a self-funding fleet program, and break-even periods between 3 and 7 years for any one of these electric SUVs. Mr. Burdick and I have looked at CA, or Canadian Automobile Association comparisons for use and cost of ownership. And within our ownership period for any one of these vehicles, which are generally replaced at approximately 7 years, if not a little longer, we well more than pass our break-even point on savings.
Well, I haven't driven, and certainly know Councillor Nixon owns one, but rented one over my recent holiday, and that one pedal driving with the regenerative braking, the brakes on those cars must last forever. Can't imagine even replacing them. Quite remarkable. Anyway. I've just,
It is remarkable.
it is. It's,
Oh, please let me talk.
You'll have your chance. Thank you, Mr. Lawrence and Mr. Heiser. Anything else, Councillor Ryan?
There's one more, Your Worship, also with the street improvement on 9th to 11th Street.
Yeah.
There was a particular citizen who was concerned about the placement of the shed. I know that the email was shared with many of us here. And I was also having the same kind of a procedural struggle as Councillor Audia Kelly about that. This person wanted to actually come to the council and actually present it, or rather voice their concern, so to say. And I wasn't sure whether I have to put it in as a late agenda item so that they may be able to come here and talk to it, or if there was some other way for them to communicate with us. So, right, to your point about emergent issues, right? This was one of those items where I had only 4 days left for my Tuesday meeting, and I was unsure like how to handle the case at this table.
Any insights?
With respect to ones like that, I mean, that individual had been in communication with staff several times, and staff have reviewed and looked at that and got lots of consultation done. In those kinds of cases, if council wants to provide an opportunity for an individual like that to come forward to council, that's got to be a bylaw change. That's essentially, I want to be mindful of what I'm saying because I never spoke with the individual and I don't know all the details of it. But what you're essentially providing at that point is a complaint platform. And there exists several throughout the city already, complaint and request for service details. And a significant amount of time and effort was spent talking with members of that street, and it was reviewed, and we received advice and continued to move forward. Unfortunately, I think it was resolved in a way that citizen is not happy, but we're going to get that all the time. So if you're looking to provide that kind of opportunity where you create an agenda item such that the person can come up on a public participation period to speak to council directly on a matter, that's a bylaw change. And that's, I'm going to say right now that would not be one that staff would recommend, because there is lots of opportunity for individuals in this community to provide feedback and request for service and to go through that process and use that, and this individual did do that. That whole process was followed. There was significant, people in this room are the ones who are involved in that communication with that individual. So that's something to consider. It would be a bylaw change, and we'd have to do that during that workshop. Not workshop, but during that committee review of the bylaw.
Fair enough. It would likely be helpful when, in this circumstance, a communication then goes to all of council, whether we could get that background. What consultation was done with the residents, what notification was made, what feedback we received beforehand, so that we, Councillor Amnes's point, we can, and to your point, look at the level of engagement and determine whether.
All I'm saying is that there is yes, I don't agree with you. That is something obviously Mr. Morehouse is going to take back. I believe there was communication, but I don't recall what went to council from that necessarily. that is essentially a complaints process that we have a system in place. And so it's ensuring that we've communicated with you how those complaint processes are followed. Because I do recall seeing communication from a council member on that, not necessarily yourself, which again generated some more communication. Having said all that, I appreciate there was emergent per se and that the actions were being taken at that time, but it wasn't that his concerns were ignored, they were followed. I just don't believe the answer the individual got was one that they were satisfied with, nor will ever be satisfied with. Which, again, that's a fair comment too. I'm not going to go further than that on that particular matter.
Thank you.
Sure.
Those are the only two things I have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I've been going up to the Wednesday socials the last few weeks, and they've been really well attended, and everybody I've spoken to has been having a great time, and the weather's really helping. Same with the Sunday markets. Those seem to be going really well, so kudos to those organizers. I too was excited for the grand reopening of the Annex Park earlier, and can say that I have consistently been walking or running or riding on those paved trails in that new system for the last at least 4 weeks. Also want to give kudos to Fernie Search and Rescue for all the work that they've been doing lately, especially on the river, and really remind the public that the river is not a controlled area. And just like in the winter, if you're going up into the mountains, you need to be ready and prepared for any and all hazards that you may know about or may come up unknown, and to be prepared for conditions that can change at any time.
Yeah, thank you. Councilor Schuster.
Thank you. Well, as for me, almost everything is excellent. Mostly just been out of town and working on concrete, so not a ton to report, other than that I've also heard about parking up by the school, and I was a little surprised as I was kind of blindsided by that, and as with some people, so. I just haven't had time since I got back to it. I had to see how can we get there type of thing, so, yeah. That's about all I had.
Thank you. Councilor Nixon.
Thank you, Worship. I too was at the grand reopening of the Annex Park today. Kudos to staff for putting that on. That was fantastic, and the scissors worked, which was great. There was a huge multimodal amount of people today, so I was very happy to see that. And that path is just used, we should have counted on it. And I'm sure we're going to see just an increase like crazy. I'm also glad to see the town was really busy on the long weekend. Lots of people speeding through town though, so it's just like going right through yield signs, near misses in front of my house, so just slow down. And speaking of electric cars, I just want to say that, you know, I mean, kudos to the staff for taking that step and going to an EV. I've had mine since February 4th, and the amount of gas money that I've saved has been over $3,000 since February. I had to drive my big vehicle up to Olds to pick up some boys that were in a basketball camp on Thursday, and I tell you, I spent over $200 in gas when it would have cost me about $45 in charging. So it was just a start. It was just a big reminder that these are very good vehicles, and they're gonna last a long time. So that's it for me.
Thank you. Not much for me. I was on vacation for the last 10 days. I thoroughly enjoyed that. I was at the Annex Park rededication, and Ms. Lyon and staff, thank you for setting that all up. I really enjoyed it, and we had a great turnout from the community. I sent a couple of emails, and we had a bunch of seniors on e-bikes and Nordic skiers on their trainers, and even Ms. Neal's family on their rollerblades and roller skates, and the book bike. It was a great turnout. And I got to chat with one of the residents afterwards, and he lives right on the dike, and he said he's amazed by the increase in use of area form, and really enjoys it. He says that's some real vibrancy to his neighborhood. And thank you for those councillors that were able to make it today. It was a fun event. Yeah, and not to put too many coats of paint on it, but yeah, I had a conversation with Simon Piney on the weekend from Fernie Search and Rescue, and he said that the most recent event, I think the one that you had alerted us to, Fernie Fire Rescue beat them to it. And he said if nothing else, it's keeping their skills sharp. But he said it would be nice to have a break from it if people would pay attention to the signs. Yeah, so thank you to them and their efforts, and as Councilor McCarthy just said, to all the firefighters in the region, fighting the wildfires. It looks apocalyptic coming in past Sparwood in the evening, so yeah, it's a real nail biter for sure.
Just another comment, Your Worship, if I may, with regards to where the logjam is. It's been reported widely on social media and stuff that a tree had fallen in front of where the logjam was. That, this morning on my dog walk, it has floated down past the logjam and past the Stanford, is now blocking a good portion of the river down there, so it's creating a whole new hazard.
Yeah.
And I think that would be one of the issues of assuming it was even possible to break up that logjam, which I have no idea. They're not going to go far. The river is very shallow. It's just going to move the logjam from one place to another. So
yeah.
So beware.
Yeah, and I appreciate. Thank you for that, and I appreciate Councillor Hamilton's comments about the river being, a dynamic, changing environment. And it does occur to me whether, from the city's perspective, having put a hand watch in, that we might want to put some signage to that effect to keep people safe. Something to consider, anyway. Thank you. With that, I will we'll move on to item 12 and move in camera. And I apologize, Mr. McCall, I'll ask you to read your recommendation.
The staff recommendation is that the meeting be closed to the public pursuant to section 90 sub 1 sub E, the acquisition, disposition of or appropriation of land or improvements if the council considers that disclosure could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality, in section 90 sub 1 sub K, both of the community charter, negotiations related discussions respecting the proposed provision of a municipal service that are at their preliminary stages, and that in the view of the council could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality if they were held in public.
Thank you. Can I have a mover? Councillor Ravidas, seconded by Councillor Hamilton. Any discussion?
Just a procedural question. Were we to not vote for that, would we all just go home?
Yes.
Interesting.
That's good.
Thank you for the question. All in favor? That's unanimous. So we'll go to close, and I'll thank those who have either joined us or watching us, will watch us in the future, to thank you for your attendance.